from Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Here are tonight's headlines.
The United States authorizes Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use as the country grapples with a surge that is killing over 2,500 people a day.
A severe variant of the coronavirus has been detected in South Africa, which could explain the rapid spread of a second wave that affects younger people.
And U.S. State Secretary Michael Pompeo will help Manila get back a fraction of the 10 million doses of Pfizer vaccine, according to Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr.
And India passes 10 million coronavirus cases, the second highest in the world, although new infection rates have fallen sharply in recent weeks.
Another weapon in the fight against the pandemic has been added into the arsenal. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration granted emergency authorization to a second COVID-19 vaccine, and this one from Moderna. Doses are expected to arrive on Monday, and this vaccine has the advantage of not needing to be stored at ultra-cold temperature. Take a look.
We worked quickly based on the urgency of this global pandemic, not because of any external pressure. Even though the process has been expedited in association with the review of this emergency use authorization, we have not cut corners, but rather have cut through regulatory red tape that can sometimes slow down the process.
The United States is the first nation to authorize the two-dose regimen, now the second vaccine to be deployed in a Western country after one developed by Pfizer and BioNTech. Both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are based on cutting-edge mRNA or messenger ribonucleic acid technology, and both have been shown to protect about 95% of people against COVID-19 compared to a placebo. Clinical trials involving tens of thousands of people each have also found no serious safety issues. Both vaccines come with warnings for people who have histories of allergic reactions to their ingredients. The most commonly reported side effects were, according to the FDA, tiredness, headache, muscle pain, chills, joint pain, swollen lymph nodes in the same arm as the injection, nausea and vomiting, and even fever. But there have now been a handful of people around the world who developed significant allergic reactions after receiving the vaccine of Pfizer, and the FDA has said it will remain vigilant.
So I think we are working hand in hand with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and we've actually been working closely with our United Kingdom colleagues who first reported these allergic reactions. And I think we'll be looking at all of the data we can from each of these reactions to sort out exactly what happened. And we'll also be looking to try to understand which component of the vaccine might be helping to produce them. A little dangerous, but it's always dangerous to speculate. But it is known that one of the components that is present in both of the vaccines, polyethylene glycol, can be associated uncommonly.
And as governments move to secure COVID-19 vaccines for their populations, choosing these treatments should not be viewed as some kind of nationalistic foot race, with some countries winning and others losing, according to a senior official with the World Health Organization. Now, Dr. Mike Ryan, Director of Emergencies, was responding to a question about public concern over governments deciding to acquire certain vaccines over others. He warned against comparing national approaches in a competitive fashion. Let's listen in.
Moving forward together, countries, and I think it's important that when citizens are looking to governments now and saying, well, we're not getting the vaccine, and there's vaccine in some countries, and governments have made choices. I mean, they've been looking at price and the profile of the product, the production capacity of the product, and their access to it because of that. And I think it's an important moment for us all there are going to be many vaccines coming on stream at different times. Some will have different advantages over the others. Some could be used at higher temperatures, Bruce, and some will be produced in higher volumes. Countries will be more used to working with a single product over a long period of time. So where you may lose in a certain part of the early part, you may gain in speed and you may gain in effectiveness later. So I don't think we should be seeing this as a game of winners and losers right now. We're at the beginning. And yes, the products that are coming through now aren't low volume. They're very expensive products and they're low volume. They've come through first, but other products will come through, we hope, early next year. So I think this idea of talking about good or bad vaccines or better or worse approaches, and we start to hold and judge governments against one another. I think governments, COVAX partners, have been negotiating in good faith with manufacturers to make the best deals they can against what Bruce has laid out very clearly, against things like the profile of the product, the production capacities, the state of data available about the product and its likely performance, and ultimately about the price of that product. These are complex decisions, and I think it could be very destructive for us all to turn this into some kind of nationalistic foot race to who does what. We all have to get there together. We simply have to finish this race in a line together. And someone getting there first doesn't necessarily help everybody else. So I think we're all going to have to just be a little bit patient and a little bit tolerant that things are going to move at slightly different paces in different situations, and we don't politicize this. And again, we've seen this again and again in this pandemic. Issues that should be about collective responsibility and moving forward together turned into comparisons and turned into he did good, she did bad, she did, and this is not the way, quite frankly, that we need to move forward right now. We need to move forward in solidarity to find these solutions. Science has delivered. Now we need solidarity.
Meanwhile, on December 18, the UN Health Agency announced that nearly 2 billion doses of current and candidate COVID-19 vaccines have been secured through the WHO-backed COVAX facility, which is a global partnership working to ensure equitable access for all nations. WHO also noted that even though the existing vaccines are limited and are also expensive, there are many more under development, including groundbreaking jabs that combine treatment for influenza or measles.
Okay. And then if you just want to hold up your screen.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence received a COVID-19 vaccine live on television on Friday in a public display designed to boost national confidence in the drug. Here's Don Orozco for that report.
United States Vice President became the highest government official to be administered with a vaccine. He was joined by his wife, Karen Pence, and U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams. United States Vice President Mike Pence became the highest government official to be administered with a vaccine. He was joined by his wife, Karen Pence, and Surgeon General Jerome Adams. The vaccination process was done in public and says that the vaccine is considered a medical miracle.
Karen and I wanted to step forward and take this vaccine to assure the American people that while we cut red tape, we cut no corners. And thanks to Operation Warp Speed, thanks to incredible research companies, thanks to the great work at the National Institute of Health and the great and careful work of the FDA, and the leadership of our President in Operation Warp Speed, the American people can be confident in Operation Warp Speed. The American people can be confident. We have one, and perhaps within hours, two, safe and effective coronavirus vaccines for you and for your family. And as you all know, yesterday, the FDA advisory panel recommended approval of the Moderna vaccine, and when it is approved, we expect later today, we'll be in a position to ship 5.9 million doses of vaccines all across the country next week.
Lack of trust, especially in communities of color, is not without good reason. The shameful Tuskegee experiments occurred within many of our lifetimes. To truly promote confidence in these vaccines, we must start by acknowledging this history of mistreatment and exploitation of minorities by the medical community and the government. But then we need to explain and demonstrate all that has been done to correct and address these wrongs.
So, Dr. Anthony Fauci, a medical expert and director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and has served as medical advisor to 6 presidents from HIV, AIDS, and many other domestic and global health issues, is looking to be vaccinated next week. Take a listen.
2 questions get asked when people have hesitancy or reluctance to get vaccinated. Did you go too quickly is the first. The answer to that is the speed was a reflection of extraordinary scientific advances and did not compromise safety, nor did it compromise scientific integrity. The decision as to whether or not it's safe and effective was not in the hands of the company, nor was it in the hands of the administration. It was in the hands of independent body of individuals, scientists, vaccinologists, ethicists, statisticians, to examine the data independently and say it is ready to look at for approval.
Fauci added that he hoped that by the middle of 2021, we can start thinking of going back to normalcy. Meantime, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, the California Surgeon General, gave her thoughts on the distribution of the vaccine here in California.
Immediate way, right? We recognize with the rollout of the vaccine going first to our healthcare workers and then to essential workers and then moving on further and further to the general public.
We are still awaiting for the rollout for another form of vaccine by Moderna, which the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved for Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. Also, U.S. President Donald Trump is awaiting recommendations from the White House medical team if he will be administered with COVID-19 vaccine. Reporting live here in Silicon Valley, this is Don Orozco, and we live in interesting times.
Long lines of Seoul City workers queue to be tested for the coronavirus as the country reports 1,053 more confirmed cases. This is the 4th straight day that it reported over 1,000 cases. Take a look.
코로나 확진자 계속 증가하고 있고 뭐 3단계 격상한다고 하고 이러니까 약간 걱정되는 마음이 나왔습니다.
It's the first time that the daily number has stayed above 1,000 for 4 straight days. The Korea Herald reported that this month alone, 6 patients have died of the disease without getting treatment while waiting to be admitted to hospitals. And the figure is feared to grow as the number of critically ill patients has been rising faster than before. The City Hall temporary testing station is one of the several in Seoul offering free tests to encourage those who may be asymptomatic. South Korea's spike came despite the government's tightening of social distancing rules in the capital area earlier this week. And the stricter restrictions included a ban on gatherings of more than 50 people and spectators at sports events. Cafes can serve only takeaways while restaurants must close by 9 p.m. with only deliveries permitted afterwards. However, authorities said they may have to tighten the curbs further to the highest level by closing schools, banning gatherings of more than 10 people, and allowing only essential employees to offices.
India surged past 10 million coronavirus cases on Saturday, official data showed, the 2nd highest in the world, although new infection rates appear to have fallen sharply in recent weeks. It has also reported 9.6 million recoveries and 145,136 deaths. Earlier, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that the country has enough capacity to produce COVID-19 vaccines for its needs and also export it to other countries that need its help. Like elsewhere, Indian authorities also have to convince some Indians skeptical about the safety of the shots. A recent survey of 18,000 people across India found that 69% said they were in no rush to get vaccinated.
Meanwhile, a severe variant of the coronavirus has been detected in South Africa, which could explain the rapid spread of the second wave that affects younger people, according to the health minister. Known as the 501.V2 variant, it was identified by South African researchers and details have been sent to the World Health Organization. Zwelini Mikezi said in a statement, a team led by the KwaZulu-Natal Research Innovation and Sequencing Platform, or CRISP, has sequenced hundreds of virus samples since the pandemic began and, quote, noticed that a particular variant has increasingly dominated the findings of the samples collected in the past 2 months. South African doctors have remarked that more patients are younger and do not always have other conditions that amplify the virus effect, but are nonetheless suffering from more severe forms of COVID-19. The minister concluded that this strongly suggests that the current second wave they are experiencing is being driven by this new variant.
In another COVID threat, a new variant of the novel coronavirus has been identified in the United Kingdom. Health officials say the new variant of this virus may contribute to a rapid increase of infections in parts of the country. Watch this.
Lasting now, but as I said in my statement, the medical advice that we have is that it is highly unlikely that this new variant will impinge the vaccine and the impact of the vaccine, but we will know that in the coming days and weeks.
More than 1,000 infections with the new variant have been detected. Michael Ryan, the chief of emergencies for the World Health Organization, said the Global Health Agency was aware of the new strain reported in the UK and was working with British and other health authorities to assess if the reported mutations might change how the virus is behaving.
Now, the WHO said an international team of experts due to travel to China next month to probe the animal origins of COVID-19 will go to Wuhan and will carry out their investigation freely. Asked about the international mission, which WHO has been working for months to get to China, World Health Organization Emergencies Chief Dr. Michael Ryan told reporters the experts were expected to travel in the first week of January. Take a look.
We still don't have a takeoff date because we're working on the logistics around visas and flights, but we do expect the team to leave in the first week of January. The team will visit Wuhan. That's the purpose of the mission. Clearly, we will have to. The team will pass through and by Beijing, as is the necessary part of any mission that's considered to be a joint approach, and we will show good courtesy to our colleagues in China in doing that. But the purpose of the mission is to go to the original point at which human cases were detected, and that we fully expect to do that.
Dr. Ryan said the world should celebrate the arrival of vaccines, but the next 3 to 6 months are going to be tough. He seemed to allude to the Americas, which is home to roughly 3/4 of the global cases. He says it's likely transmission will intensify in countries already dealing with surges in cases. Let's listen in.
2, vaccine is on the way. It is a source of great hope, and we should celebrate that vaccines are coming. But the next 3 to 6 months are going to be tough. Countries are currently have intense community transmission are likely for that transmission to intensify. Countries that have had good control on the disease may struggle to maintain that control on the disease, and you've seen that in a number of countries. Even in East Asian countries that have done well up to now, they are really having difficulties in containing certain, particularly urban outbreaks at the moment. So past success is no guarantee of future success. Past failure is no guarantee of future failure. It is really what you do now, what everyone does now. We have to bring vaccines in as a tool that puts an end to this virus, but the vaccines alone won't do it, and we don't have those vaccines at a level yet that they can actually affect the transmission dynamics of this organism.
Italy, one of the countries worst hit by COVID-19, will be placed under new restrictions over the Christmas and New Year periods, Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced late Friday. Under the new measures, shops, bars and restaurants will be closed and travel between regions will be banned, and in theory, only one daily outside trip per household will be permitted. Religious celebrations will be allowed until 10 p.m. The Prime Minister conceded that the authorities had neither the means nor the will to monitor compliance with containment measures, but he asked Italians to respect a new limit of people hosting 2 adult guests at home. Food shops, hairdressing salons, pharmacies, tobacconists, and laundries, as well as bookstores, will, however, remain open. Conte specified that the confinement would be relaxed on December 28, 29, 30, as well as on January 4. On these days, shops can remain open until 9 p.m. and people will be allowed to move about freely. Italy has 60 million inhabitants and one of the oldest populations in Europe.
Meanwhile, in France, President Emmanuel Macron said that he felt mostly fine, but he was working more slowly after being infected with the coronavirus. He pleaded with the French to remain vigilant, and this video broke with France's decades-old tradition of secrecy around the health of its presidents, whose medical histories and conditions are rarely aired in public. Take a look.
Je voulais vous remercier pour tous les messages de soutien, de sympathie, de solidarité que vous m'avez envoyés. Je voulais vous rassurer. Je vais bien, j'ai les mêmes symptômes qu'hier, c'est-à-dire de la fatigue, des maux de tête, une toux sèche, comme des centaines de milliers d'entre vous qui ont eu à vivre ce virus ou qui le vivent aujourd'hui. Je vous rendrai compte chaque jour de l'évolution de la maladie, de ce virus. Il n'y a normalement pas de raison que cela évolue mal, mais je fais l'objet d'une surveillance médicale et je vous en rendrai compte de manière totalement transparente. Pour le reste, je continue évidemment à gérer les affaires courantes en lien avec le Premier ministre, le gouvernement et mes équipes. J'ai une activité qui est un peu ralentie aussi en raison du virus, mais les dossiers prioritaires, je continue à m'en occuper, qu'il s'agisse de l'épidémie et de sa gestion pour notre pays ou par exemple du dossier du Brexit.
Canada, which has placed orders and options on more than 400 million doses of coronavirus vaccine, will share any excess doses with other countries once its population is inoculated. This according to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Canada, which launched its vaccination campaign this week, has erred on the side of caution to ensure all of its 38 million people have access to the jabs. Watch this.
On Monday, vaccinations started for the most vulnerable and our frontline workers. Canada has secured agreements for up to 417,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines ahead of schedule. This includes over 200,000 early doses of the Pfizer vaccine scheduled for next week and 168,000 doses of the Moderna vaccine before the end of December, pending Health Canada approval. In January, we'll be getting 125,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine per week for a total of about 500,000 doses for the month. With the guaranteed millions of doses coming in 2021, every Canadian who wants a vaccine will get one.
Canada launched its vaccination campaign on Monday, inoculating nursing home workers and residents in Ontario and Quebec provinces. The country hopes to vaccinate 3 million people by the end of the first quarter of 2021. In September, Canada invested about 220 million Canadian dollars in the COVAX initiative. So far, Canada has recorded more than 490,000 coronavirus cases and nearly 14,000 deaths.
Meanwhile, Austria will enter its third coronavirus lockdown between December 26 and January 24, but those who take part in a planned series of mass tests between January 15 and 17 will be allowed more freedom. Austria will enter its third coronavirus lockdown between December 26 to January 24, according to Chancellor Sebastian Kurz. He announced this on Friday as the country battles to bring down its infection rate. But Kurz said those who take part in a planned series of mass testing programs between January 15 and 17 will be allowed more freedom, such as visiting cultural events and restaurants. Hotels and cultural venues will be expected to check test results on arrival, while the police will carry out random checks in other areas. For the first 3 weeks of the lockdown, non-essential stores will close, as will services such as hairdressers, where physical proximity is unavoidable. Movement outside the home will once again be restricted to purposes such as buying food or taking exercise. However, from the 18th of January, stores and restaurants will open again for those who have tested negative. Schools will resume face-to-face teaching on the same date.
State Secretary Michael Pompeo will help Manila get back a fraction of the 10 million doses of Pfizer vaccine, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. said. Lots of laughs at others, but on the most serious note, I asked Pompeo to help Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez and I get back even a fraction of the 10 million doses of Pfizer after someone dropped the ball. He'll give it his best, he said, following a phone conversation with the American top diplomat on Friday night. Aside from Pfizer, Locsin said Romualdez is also working to secure vaccines from American biotechnology firm Moderna. Locsin previously disclosed that the Philippines was supposed to secure some 10 million doses of Pfizer's vaccine as early as January 2021. The deal, however, did not push through after a certain someone dropped the ball. Senator Panfilo Lacson later said Health Secretary Francisco Duque III failed to act quickly on the confidentiality disclosure agreement with Pfizer, missing the opportunity to get an early delivery date for Manila. Vaccine czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. meanwhile said no bus was missed and that no ball was dropped because the government is focused on its main goal to conclude the negotiation.
Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs held a turnover ceremony for the 10,000 RT-PCR test kits for COVID-19 donated by the Kingdom of Thailand to the Philippines on the 14th of December. The donations were directed to the Department of Health and the actual test kits delivered to the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine. Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. and Department of Health's Director Maria Soledad Q. Antonio ceremonially received the donation from Thai Ambassador Vasin Ruwang Pratepsayang. The delivery of the kits marks the fulfillment of Thailand's offer to all ASEAN member states, first announced by the Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha during the special ASEAN Summit on COVID-19 video conference last April 14. And we'll take a short break. Eagle News will be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Mga mahalagang pangyayari na naganap di lamang sa bansa, kundi maging sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, ating balikan sa Pilipinas 2020. Tinutukan ng Eagle News Team sa iba't ibang sulok ng bansa, pati na sa ipayong dagat. Pilipinas 2020. Hatid sa inyo ng Net25, Radyo Agila, EagleNews.ph at ng Eagle News Live. Pilipinas 2020. Abangan!
Iniimbitahan po namin kayo sa ating OPM show, ang
Himig ng Lahi.
Our Featured Artist sa gabing ito.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back to the news. Reconnaissance flights showed entire villages wiped out in Fiji on Saturday as authorities put the cost of devastating Cyclone Yasa at hundreds of millions of dollars, and the death toll rose to 4. A state of natural disaster has been declared for 30 days as emergency services scrambled to provide food and clothing to the worst affected areas. Watch this.
My fellow Fijians, the storm is passing. The sun has risen, and we are still here. Due to climate change, these storms may be getting stronger, but they will never be stronger than we are. Resilience is in our bones. We will recover. We will rebuild. We will prove ourselves stronger than Yasa. As we did with Cyclones Harold, Cyclone Jita, Kenny, Josie, Cyclone Winston, and Cyclone Evan, and the many others which have struck us. Stay strong, Fiji.
The superstorm slammed into Fiji's second-largest island, Vanuatu, late Thursday, leaving a trail of destruction. Of the 24,000 people who evacuated their homes at the height of the storm, 16,113 are still unable to return. A New Zealand Air Force reconnaissance flight flew over the area on Saturday to assess the scale of the damage, with reports of houses, crops, and entire livelihoods wiped out. The storm also damaged schools and caused widespread flooding and landslides. More than 93,000 people were affected, and the number of casualties may rise when communications are restored to hard-hit areas, the National Disaster Management Office said in a statement. The deaths of a 45-year-old man and a 3-month-old baby were confirmed after the storm swept through on Friday, and SOCO said 2 more bodies had since been found. One, a 70-year-old man, was inside his home when the roof blew away and timber fell on his head.
Completely.
French prosecutors said Saturday they had charged and imprisoned a former close associate of disgraced American billionaire Jeffrey Epstein and the prominent French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel over alleged sex crimes. Brunel was charged with rape of minors over the age of 15 and sexual harassment, according to a statement from the prosecutor's office. He was initially detained on Wednesday at Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport as he was about to board a flight to Senegal. Epstein, who was arrested in New York in July of 2019 on charges of trafficking underage girls for sex, was found hanged in his New York jail cell the following month while awaiting trial over abuses involving girls at his Palm Beach home and on his private island in the Caribbean. His ownership of an apartment in an upmarket Paris district and allegations from women who say they were abused in France prompted French prosecutors to open their own investigation. And that probe has focused on Brunel, who has been accused in American court documents of rape and of procuring young girls for his friend.
Meanwhile, a Japanese man dubbed the Twitter Killer, who was sentenced to death for the murders of 9 people, had reportedly said he will forgo an appeal against the verdict but wants to get married before his demise. On Tuesday, a Tokyo court handed down the death penalty to Takahiro Shiraishi for killing and dismembering 9 victims he met on social media platform. Shiraishi targeted internet users who had posted comments about taking their own lives, telling them he could help them with their plans and even die alongside them. While the 30-year-old has admitted killing and butchering his young victims, all but one of whom were women, his lawyers have begun procedures to appeal to a higher court. But Shiraishi told the Mainichi Shimbun that he plans to drop further legal action. He said he had not been nervous about the verdict because it was obvious. While voicing his readiness to accept the punishment, he expressed a wish to get married. He said, quote, "I want to meet an ordinary girl," he said. "I want to get married. I want to find a marriage partner while I am in jail." His lawyers have argued he should receive a prison sentence rather than be executed because his victims, aged between 15 and 26, had expressed suicidal thoughts on social media and so had consented to die. But a judge dismissed that argument and handed down the death penalty for the 2017 crimes, saying the case had provoked great anxiety in society because social networks are so commonly used.
Meanwhile, just like in the U.S. mainland, Hawaii has received its share of the COVID-19 vaccine, with the first shipment arriving last Monday. Mio Asenas from our EBC Hawaii Bureau has the latest on the vaccination program that's just getting started in the Aloha State. Take a look.
When the COVID vaccine comes available to me, I plan to take it because I feel, after reading up about it, that it's relatively safe.
So I think we would do a great disservice by not protecting our family members, those who are vulnerable and those who are young. So if you get the chance to take it, please take this vaccine.
Earlier today, the first COVID-19 vaccination in Hawaii took place in the Queens Medical Center in downtown Honolulu. The first shot was administered to Dr. Lester Moorhead, followed by 4 other members of the hospital staff. They include 2 nurses, a respiratory therapist, and a housekeeping aide. Tripler Army Medical Center has received its initial shipment of the Pfizer vaccine earlier today as well. Under guidance by the U.S. Department of Defense, military hospitals will implement a data-driven, phased approach of vaccination as recommended by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. Meanwhile, hospitals across the state continue to prepare their facilities and even rehearse their procedures, in anticipation of the arrival of additional shipments of the vaccine in the coming weeks ahead. Healthcare workers at this VA medical center are already looking forward to receiving the vaccine and setting an example for others.
Once the vaccine is available, I am willing to take it because first, I have to protect myself and my family. And another thing is I want to protect the patient as well.
The vaccine that has been cleared is Moderna and Pfizer. Both are mRNA vaccines, which you take the shot and about 2 weeks later your body begins to build antibodies. I think that is one of the best immunizations that you can get. Why? Because you will develop antibodies that will protect you from getting the virus or having a wide proliferation of the virus. So I think that we should, as a people, to protect your family and people in the house or those who you come in contact with, you should take the vaccine.
Health officials are estimating that every hospital in the Aloha State will get the vaccine by next week. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Mio Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Parts of Sydney were heading into a fresh lockdown on Saturday. Although the restrictions, which will be enforced by police, only apply to the northern beaches, the state premier of New South Wales, of which Sydney is the capital, pleaded with Sydney's more than 5 million residents to stay at home as much as possible over
But we
the
are
coming
concerned,
days.
extremely
Watch
concerned,
this.
and that's why we're saying to everybody on the Northern Beaches in the Northern Beaches community, stay home unless you absolutely have to be out and about.
Frustrated and a bit apprehensive as well, and got to have to line up in this line for God knows how long with the kids to try and get them tested. And we did it last time at the very first of the break, and this one here just cracked it.
Officials in Australia's most populous city said they hoped the restrictions would be enough to control a growing outbreak in time for the holidays. As a cluster of cases on the city's northern beaches grew to 38, residents were ordered to stay at home from late Saturday until midnight on Wednesday, other than for essential reasons. From 5 p.m. on Saturday, hundreds of thousands of people in several suburbs will be forced indoors with beaches, pubs and hotels closed. Masks are still not mandatory in the city, but residents in the northern beaches have been urged to wear them at all times while inside. Australia has recorded over 28,000 COVID-19 cases and 900 deaths linked to the virus in a population of about 25 million. Eagle News, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Aguila Pilipinas, a one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Aguila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Aguila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to explain our help outdoor chat.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Benign inflation environment and optimism of the delivery of coronavirus disease vaccines provided a leeway for the policy-making Monetary Board to keep the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas key rates steady. BSP Governor Benjamin Diokno, in a briefing aired over the central bank's Facebook page, said that the inflation environment remains benign even with the latest uptick in food inflation, which is expected to be transitory, and the rise in global oil prices. Let's take a listen.
At its meeting on monetary policy today, the Monetary Board decided to maintain the interest rate on the BSP's overnight reverse repurchase facility at 2%. The interest rates on the overnight deposit and lending facilities were likewise kept at 1.5% and 2.5% respectively. The Monetary Board's decision was based on its assessment that the inflation environment remains benign. The latest baseline forecasts have risen slightly due to the sharp increase in global crude oil prices and the higher than expected food inflation in November. However, since the rise in food prices is transitory, it is expected that the future inflation path will remain firmly within the government's 2 to 4% target over the policy horizon. The balance of risk to the inflation outlook also leans toward the downside from 2020 to 2022, owing largely to potential disruptions to domestic and global economic activity amid the ongoing pandemic. Meanwhile, inflation expectations remain broadly consistent with the inflation target. The Monetary Board noted that the resurgence of COVID-19 cases globally has tempered economic activity with the reimposition of preventive measures in recent weeks. However, optimism over the delivery of vaccines has lifted market confidence, supporting improved prospects for global growth. On the domestic front, the Monetary Board also observed early indications of improved mobility and sentiment. While recent natural calamities could pose strong headwinds to growth, the further easing of quarantine measures should help facilitate the recovery of the economy in the coming months.
U.S. lawmakers struggling to reach a critical pandemic relief and federal spending deal struck a last-minute agreement Friday to avert a midnight shutdown of the government and extend negotiations through the weekend. Congressional leaders are frantically trying to resolve sticking points in a roughly $900 billion measure aimed at providing emergency relief for millions of Americans on the verge of losing key benefits. Because the pandemic relief plan is tied to passage of a separate $1.4 trillion federal spending package, the impasse threatened to temporarily shut down the government, a scenario not unheard of in politically divided Washington, but disastrous given the worsening economy and record daily death tolls from COVID-19. The House of Representatives voted 320 to 60 late Friday to extend funding for federal agencies through Sunday to allow negotiators to finish their stimulus package. The Senate quickly passed the measure by voice vote, and President Donald Trump signed the bill hours before the midnight deadline. Talks on the relief package appear stuck in part over a Republican proposal to limit the Federal Reserve's ability to provide credit for businesses and other institutions.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Russia was pretty clearly behind a devastating cyber attack on several U.S. government agencies that also hit targets worldwide. There was a significant effort to use a piece of third-party software to essentially embed code inside of U.S. government systems, according to Pompeo in the Mark Levin show on Friday. Roughly 80% of the affected customers are located in the U.S. Microsoft President Brad Smith said in a blog post, with victims also found in Belgium, Britain, Canada, Israel, Mexico, Spain, and the United Arab Emirates. The threat comes from a long-running attack, which is believed to have infected malware into computer networks using enterprise management network software made by the Texas-based IT company SolarWinds, with the hallmarks of a nation-state attack. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, didn't identify who was behind the malware attack. But private security companies pointed a finger at hackers linked to the Russian government. SolarWinds said up to 18,000 customers, including government agencies and Fortune 500 companies, had downloaded compromised software updates, allowing hackers to spy on email exchanges. Russia has denied involvement.
Newcastle United boss Steve Bruce says some of the club's coronavirus victims are battling extreme exhaustion as they attempt to fight their way back to fitness. The Magpies will once again be without a number of unnamed players for Saturday's home match against Fulham as a result of lingering effects of the COVID-19 outbreak, which prompted the club to close their training ground at the end of last month. Defender Federico Fernandez and midfielder Isaac Hayden have returned to the fold in the past week, but some of their teammates have not been so fortunate. The Newcastle boss said the most worrying element was lingering fatigue. Two members of Bruce's squad have been hit particularly hard by the virus, and the 59-year-old admits their plight shows the gravity of the situation.
In other sports news, Australia's grueling Sydney Hobart Yacht Race was called off for the first time in 76 years on Saturday because of an escalating coronavirus outbreak, according to its organizers. The often brutal 628 nautical mile Blue Water Classic was due to start on Boxing Day. But with parts of Sydney locked down after a new cluster of COVID-19 cases, it was cancelled. The decision to pull the plug came the same day authorities in Hobart announced plans to impose a 14-day quarantine requirement on all travelers from Sydney. And it also came as the cluster of new coronavirus cases on the city's northern beaches grew to 38, and residents were ordered to stay at home until at least midnight on Wednesday, except for essential reasons.
It was InfoTrack, the comprehensive.
The NBA's Board of Governors formally approved the sale of the Utah Jazz to software developer Ryan Smith on Friday, welcoming the tech billionaire as a fantastic addition to the league. Smith, the co-founder and chief executive of Utah company or software company Qualtrics, takes control of the team from the Miller family, who had owned the club for 35 years before the sale first reported in October. The deal is worth a reported $1.66 billion, and Forbes magazine ranked the Jazz at 21st in value among the NBA's 30 clubs earlier this year at $1.55 billion.
And finally, in our news, fans that attended the inauguration of the third newly built World Cup stadium to be ready in Qatar say they were happy to be allowed back in the stands, some feeling the organizers did a top-notch job for the first match to allow 20,000 fans inside a venue. Take a look.
As I said again, it's been a long time since I've been with so many people in an event like this. I didn't think it was possible to have 20 people inside the stadium with what happened with the pandemic. But honestly, I have to clap down for the guys who organized it.
It was good. Everybody was happy, enjoying themselves, and at the end, we're all happy.
Qatar inaugurated its latest stadium on Friday for the 2022 World Cup with a half-capacity 20,000-strong crowd who had all tested for the coronavirus or antibodies beforehand, but with minimal social distancing. The launch of the Ahmad bin Ali Stadium, 24 kilometers west of the capital Doha, marks one of the largest sports gathering anywhere in the world since the start of the pandemic. Qatar, which has tested 43% of its 2.75 million population, says has recorded 141,716 infections since the beginning of the pandemic, with a high rate attributed to aggressive testing and unsanitary accommodation for workers. However, only 242 people have died of the virus, and the rate of new infections per 100,000 for the past week was 37.7, well down from the peak.
That looks like a nice event. I want to see fireworks.
I know.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. We'll see you again on Monday.
All right, we'll see you back next week. But before we go, I'd like to greet my inaanak, our director, Sam Gozum, my inaanak, happy birthday. His birthday is tomorrow, but we won't have time to greet him. So, happy birthday, anak.
Happy birthday.
And at the end of the day, as I always say, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.